I always felt that bravery is only the management of fear. Everybody's frightened, but you, through training and mental attitude, determination, you overcome it, and you can get used to it.
Lieutenant Colonel Tim Spicer has certainly led a colourful and sometimes controversial life filled with action and adventure. During his 20 years in the British Army and as a commanding officer of the crack regiment, the Scots Guards, he saw active service in many conflicts, including the Falklands campaign. In 2001, he founded and later sold the private security company Aegis, which was instrumental in rebuilding Iraq after the war. His memoir, An Unorthodox Soldier, is a fast-paced account of this military life, including the events surrounding his time in Papua New Guinea when he was captured and held at gunpoint. His latest book, A Dangerous Enterprise, is the true story of a key clandestine naval operation during World War II. It taps into Spicer's extensive knowledge of intelligence, espionage, and counter-terrorism. Recently remarried and living peacefully and comfortably on the Devon coast, I'm delighted he has allowed himself to be reeled in to talk to me at Auriens Culford's restaurant. I began by asking him whether this newfound domesticity and life as a country squire signalled a loss of appetite for adventure and daring do.
I think if you like that sort of thing, you're never going to give it up. But no, you have to slow down because you can't move as fast as you used to. So take it easy, but I'll never give it up.
No.
Other ways of getting a bit of...
Once an adrenaline junkie, always an adrenaline junkie. And you've always been a field man, as you like to say, at the sharp end of things.
Yeah.
I suppose, as you say now, you can't run quite as fast, so your taste for action is more at a remove, isn't it, than it was before?
I mean, it is removed. I mean, I do, I suppose, more sporting type things. I shoot a lot, I hunt in Africa a bit. Skiing.
You still skiing?
Yeah, when I can.
You're incredibly fit. I mean, you look much younger than your years. You are very Peter Pan-esque. How do you keep so fit, actually, by doing this sport?
Yeah, I think if you're a soldier, you do, it's sort of ingrained in you. You do fitness every day. And I think it's a pity when people get older and don't keep it up. I train with Pauline 3 times a week for an hour, deliberately, proper training. We're lucky we can get our own swimming pool, so that helps. We have a trainer, and between that, we up and down our cliff, down to the beach, and walking.
Well, I'm glad to see from what you've selected on the menu at Auriens today that you haven't become a vegan, however.
Actually, I don't know. Paulie's a vegan, so occasionally we have vegan days, and I don't mind it. So, I'm certainly never giving up red meat. So
what else has marriage done for you? You still drink, and you still you still smoke your cigars, and you still like caviar. So your life is both discipline and indulgence. You marry the two of them.
Yeah, and you can't really do one without the other. If you just indulge, you're going to become a correct fat thing and fall to bits. But I suppose I justify it to myself by keeping very fit, and that means the cigars and the red wine don't get noticed so much. Caviar's very healthy for you. Anyway.
The caviar's very, very healthy, and the squirt of lemon on it is fantastic as well. And actually, vodka iced is very, very good. It keeps the germs at bay.
Exactly.
Disinfectant. And this next phase of your life, I think, is as an author. During the COVID months, you wrote an entire book, A Dangerous Enterprise, which has been made Daily Mail Book of the Week. So tell me about, is this, I know you wrote a memoir, An Unorthodox Soldier, but this new you as a writer, is it something you see yourself doing more of?
I've got the bug of a certain type of writing. It's actually the research I really like. And then I don't mind putting it together. So this one, The Dangerous Enterprise, was sort of, I stumbled on the story by accident. And because lockdown made it easy, you had to have something to do. Otherwise, I pity people just didn't have things to do, suffered. So it was quite easy to be disciplined because you weren't going anywhere. The weather was fantastic, so get up and start work. And it came together in a year, in the lockdown year.
Where did you get the idea to write this incredible story? Tell us about the story.
The story? Well, I'll start how I got the idea. I went to the Dartmouth Museum, which is a tiny country town museum, but Dartmouth's full of history. And I knew the sort of director of the museum, retired naval officer. And he said, "Oh, come and look at this. This is a story that will interest you." And I'd never heard it before. It was a story of something called the 15th Motor Gunboat Flotilla, based in Dartmouth in the war, ostensibly belonging to the Royal Navy. In fact, not. Belonging to the Secret Intelligence Service. Completely. Commanded from London. And their job was to run agents across the channel to Brittany in the filthiest weather. Pitch dark, no radar. You weren't allowed to use any navigational aids. And they would drop them ashore and then pick up agents that needed to come back or escape prisoners or that sort of thing. And I couldn't believe the story. Nobody really got it. There was an official history, but it wasn't very detailed. And I thought, well, this is really interesting. And I managed to track down, this was the key to it, the relatives of a small number of people that were involved in it, including Jane and Andrew Birkin.
Jane, the actress.
Jane, the actress, and Andrew, her brother, who's a fellow. Because their father, he is the most unlikely hero of the story. At the beginning of the war, he was unfit for military service and somehow bluffed his way into the Navy as a able seaman, sort of not an officer. And he had 30-odd operations on his ears, nose and throat. He's half blind.
God.
He was seasick if he looked at a cup of tea. And he inveigled himself. He got an interview, we think, with the help of Brendan Bracken, who's Churchill's, one of Churchill's close aides, with Frank Slocum, the Secret Intelligence Service officer who was in charge of this. And Slocum obviously recognised something in Birkin, gave him the job, and a temporary commission, media commission of the Royal Naval Volunteer Reserve, which was a cover story. And David Birkin found he had an aptitude for navigation.
How old was he? Sorry, how old was he then? In his 30s?
In his early 30s.
Right.
Late 20s, early 30s. These are all incredibly young guys. And because he was an artist and a mathematician, the two skills enabled him to visualise the whole sort of journey, navigation, rocks, tide, height of rocks above water at certain levels. Incredible stuff.
So he could see it rather than to see it on paper.
And he drew it.
Yeah. And there's wonderful drawings in your book. Yeah.
I mean, there's one, I'm not sure, I can't remember if it's in the book. There are some in the book. But there's one where he picked a particular rock off the coast, but that was his aiming point. And when he got there, he then knew where to go. And he drew it at every single hour of the tide. So he can tell when he arrived there, was this the right one? 3 hours before low tide. Very clever. And of the 50-odd missions they did, he navigated 32 of them. And was really the hero of the show. And he sort of emerged from the rather vague research I was doing, and suddenly out comes David Birkin, and then we had to make him the central character. And of course, Jane and Andrew, very helpful to me, had all his papers. They went in a museum, so I got it home still, on loan from them. His original name.
God, what a coup.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
Yeah, how extraordinary.
So that was the excitement.
And Mitterrand features him. And
Mitterrand was one of the agents they put ashore.
Extraordinary story.
His code name was Morland, and he was one of de Gaulle's emissaries. So he's quite important to go to the resistance and get them galvanised, so cohesive organisation. And he never got caught.
And do the French know that side of the story. That's been well documented.
And I also thought, okay, I have to write the French side of the story too.
Yeah.
So there's some incredibly brave French men and women. And it always occurred to me that the boys in the flotilla would do their job, very dangerous, horrible conditions, but they could come home. They were back in Dartmouth for breakfast. And then they would have gaps between missions where they were relatively safe. The old Frenchies on the other side were, they went home and expecting the knock on the door from the Gestapo. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. Incredible pressure. And there's some fantastic stories emerged from the French side. And again, I was very lucky. Charles played quite a lot, a role in how this book developed. I wrote to a website in memory of a British agent who was a Frenchman, called Pierre Hontic. And I wrote a sort of random, unsolicited email to them and got back, because I wanted to use some photographs on the website, and I got back a note from his daughter saying, how can I help? And by the way, I live in London. So she was really helpful.
Good. Lucky breaks.
And she knows everything about her father's career. And trying to fathom the complexities of running an intelligence network in France during war, getting it accurate, was really quite tricky. And she was very helpful in unravelling it. And then Jane introduced me to loads of people in Brittany, including Claude Tanguy, who is now in his 80s, the last surviving member of the network that operates with these boats.
Goodness.
He was 15 at the time.
Oh, my goodness.
And
he's compos mentis now.
Oh, completely. Because I said to him, well, Monsieur Tanguy, weren't you supposed to be at school? He said, no, the Germans closed my school. If you were a 15-year-old, what else would you do in the summer holidays but join the French resistance?
And do you think he still relives those moments over and over again, or has he?
No, I think, funnily enough, we sort of explored that, because at one stage they were betrayed. Towards the end of the war, there was a traitor somewhere in their network, or close to their network. And it resulted in some arrests. And it got, this sort of debate we were having in France got quite complicated, because I knew that they knew who the traitor was, but they wouldn't tell me. And so I discussed it with Jane, and we worked out that they couldn't really prove it, so they couldn't get him, in the sort of post-war retribution court cases and the collaboration or betrayal. And I think they then chose to ignore it. Just, no thanks. But I have a vague recollection of them saying, well, we know who it is, we just cross over the street and don't have anything to do.
I mean...
And that their punishment is that they know.
Yes, exactly.
And they have to live that.
They have to live with that every day, exactly. I mean, it's got all the ingredients that you love: clandestine warfare, brave leaders, and lowly fighters.
Lonely operators.
And lonely operators. That's the romance in you. That's what you've always been driven or pursued. That.
Certainly. And actually, there's a quote in the book from T.E. Lawrence, who said...
Your hero.
One of them. Clandestine warfare is a bit more intellectual than a bayonet charge.
Yeah.
He's right. It's much more interesting. And it's individual people making a difference at the right time. Lawrence being one of them. But these guys certainly... Well, I claim that they made a difference to the course of the war. A couple of historians have poo-pooed that. But actually, the information they brought out... I mean, they were the catalysts for it. They brought out the information, or the agents with the information, that enabled us to beat the U-boats. So with the battle of the Atlantic, beginning of the war, when we were being starved out. Then they got all the intelligence for the invasion of Normandy. And then they got the intelligence on the B-1 and B-2 rockets. So 3 significant parts of the war they contributed a hell of a lot. So...
Yeah, that's extraordinary. I mean, actually, it's quite interesting to... the attitude to risk in the book, but the attitude to risk in your life as well, and in the society we live in now. We live in in a risk-averse society, don't we? Everything's got to be bubble-wrapped and everything needs to be labelled and signposted so that we don't trip and kill ourselves. Do you think that... Has your attitude to risk changed as you've got older, especially during this time of the pandemic?
No.
No.
Not in the slightest. No, I say that. I'm lucky that I've lived with risk all the time. So I can't really imagine what it's like not to accept risk.
As part of the fabric of life.
The way, whether it's the risk of crossing the road or risk of...
Dying tomorrow, yes, or whatever.
And I do feel sorry for people that are bubble wrapped. I think it's a terrible way to live.
Yeah.
It does worry me that society is heading, what I call the cotton wool society. You call it bubble wrap. But you can't do anything, and people are not. I mean, I'm overgeneralising. People are not, pretty risk averse, but there are plenty of people out who still like risk. Yeah. But the general trend is towards
overprotecting,
risk aversion, and protection, and mollycoddling, all that stuff. And the way that people are advised to bring up their children. I mean, I know it's different than perhaps when you and I were growing up. There are much more dangerous things out there. But
you have to learn to climb trees and fall. You have to be able to
play conkers.
No.
I mean, without wearing sort of industrial glasses or something. I mean, it's absurd.
I remember my son's school, primary school, when they had to cancel sports day because there was a bit of rain and they were fearful of children slipping on the grass.
You'll never progress if you eradicate that sort of stuff. It's crazy.
And as a soldier, I mean, you were a soldier for 20 years in really dangerous zones. Have you learned to conquer, or is it fear? I mean, is fear part of the makeup of everyday life as a soldier, or is it something you learn to deal with?
Well, it's not every day, but it is something you, being a soldier, is designed for. You might go and fight somebody in a battle, get shot at. And I always felt that bravery, to turn it on his head, is only the management of fear. Everybody's frightened. Anybody who says they're not frightened is rubbish. Of course you get frightened. But you, through training and mental attitude, determination, you overcome it. And you can get used to it. I think of the young lads who were in Afghanistan, which was pretty intense for 6 months. And some of the stories you read there. And it's sort of akin to the Second World War, really. You get used to it. And as long as you don't get complacent, then it's all manageable. If you get complacent, make mistakes. If you go too far over the other way of ignoring fear, then you're in trouble.
Yes.
So you have to respect it and manage it.
Absolutely. And you live near the sea, and you're drawn to the Navy, weirdly, but you're quite scared of the sea, aren't you? You're not totally.
I'm not scared of it. I respect it
because
the sea is so powerful. Make one mistake and it'll get you. But scrapes on the water that quite exciting. We're quite likely to get away with because it is so powerful. You get it wrong. You've got to respect it. You can't fool about.
You've had various scrapes in your life, career which has courted a small dose of controversy some of the time. Looking back on your life, would you have done anything differently? No. I love that. Really, very, very... Really.
I mean, there's sort of things you think, maybe there's not probably the smartest way of doing that particular thing, but of course you do, and you learn from your mistakes, but I wouldn't change it at all.
You wouldn't have done anything differently. And what would you advise your 21-year-old self looking at? Would you tell your 21-year-old self anything, knowing what you know now about life and the world?
Well, it's quite easy to tell a 21-year-old, whether it's yourself or your son or your friends' children. You can tell them what you're like, but they're only going to find out for themselves.
That's so true,
because every experience you have, it's rather like, I forget, some shrink analyst said it. It's called the onion skin theory. Everything you do adds another layer to your experience, or your skin, as it were. And you can tell a 21-year-old to a blue in the face, don't do that, or do it like this. Anyway, you're going to find out you can do it.
Yeah.
The other fingers better than might not.
Yeah, I'm sure your son Sam does it his own way, whatever he...
His own way. He's quite good. He sort of asks me and says, what do you think about this? And I'm quite careful not to say, do it like this. I'm to say, well, I would do it like that. No. Or, why did you think about this? And, there are options. You choose. Your decision. Quite often tell him he's his own cavalry.
Yes, that's a really good one. And for the next stage of your life, you've got another book project, haven't you?
Yeah. Starting to already.
Have you? The grass doesn't grow under your feet, does it?
No, because it's exciting. It's actually an extension of that book. Damon's Enterprise. There's a character in there who was one of the clients, if you like, of the flotilla, who had this extraordinary name, Wilfrid Biffney Dilderdale. And he was, for want of a better description, an ace spy, a very serious intelligence agent, who started his life. He was born in Odessa in 1899. By the time he was 19, he'd been picked up by the British intelligence world. He had 2 mentions in dispatches in an MBA by the time he was 19.
Incredible.
Spoke fluent Russian, English, obviously, French, Polish, German. And he's the man who helped procure one of the first Enigma machines. He was then SIS head of station in Paris from 1926 to 1940. Sort of last man out in 1940. And he did some extraordinary things. Very, very forward-thinking. He knew that Germans were going to invade. He knew that the French probably wouldn't put up much of a fight. So he laid the groundwork, some very clever groundwork. One of the things he did was install one of his white Russian friends, who was an emigre in Paris, as a manager of a small hotel.
How brilliant. Where, in Paris?
In Paris, in the boulevard.
Does it still exist?
Well, I'm going to see it.
Yeah. Oh, good.
I'm going to find it. I'm certainly going to find a photograph of it in the archive, Paris City Archive. But the clever thing was, okay, so if you want to have movement of people and money, stuff that's not suspicious.
Hotel.
Perfect safe house.
Yeah.
And
absolutely.
It worked. It operated from 1940 to the end of 1943, when, again, they were betrayed. But Paul Galesso, the guy who ran it, managed, just before the Gestapo came, he set the signals. In fact, there's the shutters in the building, angled in a certain way to say, don't come. We've had it. The Germans are here. The great stuff you see in films and things.
Night manager.
Yeah, exactly. That sort of thing. So I'm looking forward to that. It'll be quite exciting.
And then you're going to have a bit of R&R in your favourite hotel, Colombe d'Or.
Of course. Why wouldn't you?
Celebrate your 69th birthday. So, yes, if it were your last supper, your last birthday supper, what would you order?
Caviar, certainly. Caviar and black cow vodka.
And then you'd have a lot of your waifs and strays around the table. I love the fact that you have a house, an estate. You've created this estate and rescued chickens, rescued donkeys, rescued... What else? Yes, staffies, rescued tortoises, and rescued humans as well. You've got quite a few waifs and strays, around your Christmas table.
Always.
What's your attraction to waifs and strays? I think it's delightful, but...
Hoping that I wouldn't be one myself.
Yeah.
I think, really, just, they're always usually interesting people. If you could help them out, look after them, and make them feel happy, it's great. Very good.
And after this supper, say you choke on your... This is a bit morbid, but you choke on your grape at the end of this last supper. What happens to you then? Do you believe in God? Do you believe in an afterlife?
Not really. I think there's a greater... There's something there, but whether it's I'm not particularly religious. I think religion is an extremely powerful force, which is comforting to some people and extremely ghastly for others. It causes wars, it causes misery, and then you have interfaith struggles. So I'd rather sort of
leave it aside.
When you soft it.
Yeah. And that's fine by you.
Yeah, absolutely right.
And what about a legacy? Are you interested in a legacy you leave behind? How do you want to be remembered?
Contributing something. You asked me about an epitaph.
Yes.
And I can't quite remember. It's attributed to Edmund Burke. All it takes for evil to triumph is for good men to do nothing. I'd like to be one of the good men that did something. I'm not sure about that attribution, but it's a good thing.
It's a very good epitaph. Yeah. Well, thank you very much. If you've enjoyed today's show, you can hear more episodes in the series by clicking follow wherever you're listening to this, or simply searching The Third Act on Apple Podcasts, Spotify and YouTube. And if you think your friends would love to listen, please do tell them about the series. This episode was produced by Pete Norton and made possible by Auriens, luxurious residences that are redefining later living in the heart of Chelsea. I'm Catherine Fairweather, and I'll see you back next week for another episode of The Third Act.